really it all just boils down to like when you hold the guitar or you plug into the thing, when you strum that first chord, what do you feel? How strong is that connection? How big is that inspiration? It's a very, I don't want to get too woo-woo on you, but the spiritual aspect of like the creation of music and the idea of sound is been a very interesting thing to me in the last couple of years. And I definitely think that as musicians, we have a very distinct privilege of being able to be stewards of sound.
So Sean, welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sitting down with me.
I appreciate it, Mason. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Yeah. To get started with our talk, I thought, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your musical background before you started your YouTube channel?
Well, it's funny. I actually just had a conversation about this recently with a friend who isn't musical. And it's odd that I can't really place the moment that music started to play a role in my life. Music was always kind of there. No one in my family is a musician, but my dad was always playing stuff like the Beatles, Michael Jackson. Those are my earliest musical memories, is hearing Beatles songs and Michael Jackson at the same time. And I remember being a little kid and like that Moonwalker VHS tape, like I still have the copy of it that I used to watch when I was little. I'm surprised that thing still survives because I watched that thing constantly. So music was always kind of there, but it didn't really start to play a role in my life until like about the age of 11 or 12. At that point, I started perusing the TV channels outside of the stuff that kids normally watch. So I happened upon, VH1 on like a lazy Sunday morning, and it was like, oh, there's some there's music videos. Oh, this is interesting. We'd go to MTV, and that was like the heyday of TRL. So it was almost like the perfect time for an 11, 12-year-old to like start to get curious about this greater world of music. And it's not like I wasn't exploring anything before that either. I had, there were kids shows like All That on Nickelodeon that would have musical guests every once in a while. So I was definitely exposed to some like decent pop and R&B groups of the late 90s, early aughts time. But really that time with TRL when they were willing to play things like TRL was like Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, but at the same time there was Limp Bizkit, Blink-182, Korn, all that other stuff. It was a very eclectic musical time.
Yeah. I remember. I think we're probably about the same age because that rings true to me.
I would have to guess. If that hits you in the heart, then you understand the time.
Yes, absolutely.
But ironically, when I started playing guitar, like the first couple of years, I just hated it. And I think after, some odd years, I think at this point I've been playing guitar now for double the time of my life that I didn't play guitar. I think it came down to two factors. One, when I started, I wasn't really motivated all that much because the concept of like what getting into being a musician is, I just thought like, oh, playing guitar looks like it would be fun, and it wasn't fun. Like something didn't click there. But then I thought about how I had a 3/4 size nylon string guitar, but I was into like the rock stuff that was coming out at the time. And I started about 2 months before my 12th birthday taking guitar lessons. Pretty shortly thereafter, starting lessons was when I started to hit my growth spurt. So by the time I'm 6 months into lessons, my hands have gotten bigger. I'm way too big for a 3/4 size student guitar. So for a year and a half, I was plunking along on this small guitar. It's like, no wonder I hated it, because every time I'd go to, I know that I'm playing this bar chord right. I know that I have this. But it just sounds like plink, 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 plink.
Yeah.
So that was a real disheartening moment. But Man, the first I got a decent electric guitar from my dad, he kind of sort of, I guess he kind of like hid it away for a little while, just kind of
Mm.
in the hopes that I really took to it.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I got that, I played on stage for the first time at age 14. I played that guitar solo in front of an audience, and it was like, dude, this is it. This is this is the thing.
What was it? What solo from
It
what song?
Oh man, like everybody's gonna think this is so lame, but I remember it vividly. It was the solo from "Island in the Sun" by Weezer off the Green
Oh
album.
yeah.
Yeah, like it's a great melodic solo. I mean, it's just the song's melody, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, like you hit the distortion pedal and it's just like singing out. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you get the right sound or like a simple melodic guitar solo, there's nothing better.
It's the George Harrison cheat code right there. I think I read somewhere that he's very into taking the verse melody, adapting it a little bit for guitar, and we're
Sure.
off to the races. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Speaking of George Harrison, that nylon string guitar solo in "All My Love," that is right
Mm,
there is a perfect example of that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. So it makes sense. Like you're playing a 3/4 scale. It's like you're playing basketball with shoes that are like two sizes too small. It's like,
You
why do I hate this so much?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I one of the byproducts of doing what I do, and I feel very fortunate that people consider me to be an authority when it comes to guitar related stuff, whether it's
Hmm.
playing or whether it's advising people on equipment. They'll ask me if their kid is like wanting to start playing, and I can never give them a simple straight answer other than like, whatever you do, don't buy him a student guitar.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, even aside from sizing, just the quality of and obviously, I mean, this has changed a lot in the last since you and I started playing.
Oh yeah.
A $300 guitar is not what it used to be, and in a
Oh
good
my,
way,
yeah,
But if you get something with
absolutely.
sharp frets or just the truss rod's way out of whack, you're not gonna want to play that thing. And
Oh, for
even if you don't
sure.
know, you feel it. You feel
Uh-huh.
something's wrong. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing to me because like if I don't want to get too far off the flow of the conversation, but I have a guitar right next to me. Can I bring it on to show you guys real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So last year, a friend of mine who I've met through my crazy involvement in the gear world hipped me to this company called Hills Guitars. It's a new company, a new brand. They're built in Indonesia, and the company is sort of like a sister brand of a company based out of Korea. But this thing is headless guitars are really hot right now. But this thing is
Mhm.
$500. Now,
Oh wow.
last year I did quite a few guitar demos with many of them thanks to our partnership together. So thank you to you guys for helping me explore the world of guitars last year.
No
But
problem. And since we
yeah,
don't sell that guitar, I'm gonna cut all of this out.
yeah, right.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
right.
Yeah.
Although they're a growing brand and they might be interested in having some dealers, and
Hey, you never know.
I can tell you right now, the response that I've got, I figured nobody knows this brand. Nobody is going to watch this video, but I'm interested in it. So I like it. I want to show people. I played guitars that were 4 times the price of this, and this was the guitar last year that absolutely blew me away. There's no the fact that it's $500 and it is as good as it is, that's the perfect encapsulation of what you just said. A guitar that
Hmm.
was $300 back when we were getting started, it was just completely not the thing that you would want. I remember those Squire Bullet Strats being like
Hmm.
$99. Those Nobody would want to be caught dead playing one of those. Now,
Yeah.
though, you can here's a $500 headless guitar with premium features, and it's unreal the way that the quality has increased over the years.
Definitely. Definitely. Actually, you answered one of my later questions, which was going to be, what's a piece of gear from last year that really inspired you, that really surprised you? So,
Well, that really surprised
yeah,
me, but believe me, there's plenty more where that came from.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So going back to kind of your history, I saw that you attended GIT.
I did, yeah.
So obviously you caught the fever
Oh
and
yeah.
took it further. So tell me a little bit about your experience applying and what it was like to be a student there, really.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, my experience applying was a bit interesting because I had originally applied there to try to get into their bachelor degree program.
Hmm.
And some of the requirements for that entrance test were just it was far more advanced knowledge than I had at the time. So I didn't end up going for the bachelor degree. I just went straight for GIT, which in and of itself is not like a 4-year degree style program. But my God, man, if there is any period of time in my life that I would never trade for the world, it's the. I spent 3 years at Musicians Institute as a whole, with my time at GIT just being about 2 years of it. But man,
Okay.
you're surrounded by other guitar players. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by other guitar players that were as passionate about it as I was, that were as into it as I was, that wanted to be as good as they possibly could be, no matter what style, and there was no competition amongst us. I
Hmm.
cannot tell you what it meant to finally be surrounded by a group of people that were like, we're totally cool being friends and like trading licks and helping each other discover playing techniques and ways of doing things that make us better. And we're not like slinging mud or throwing shade at every single turn. We were, we used to have auditions come through, and there's like 10 of my classmates are going for an audition to go, try to be the rhythm guitar player for the Offspring or something. And we would literally have a group where we just watch the auditions like from outside the room where they are, and it's literally just like a small cheering section. Like if one of us got a gig, none of us were going to begrudge the other because we got it. So it was incredible.
That's awesome.
It was a
Yeah.
great time to be there. The staff was just spot on. You're talking about guys that were trained by you're talking about a lot of the staff were trained by members of the freaking wrecking crew. So
Wow. Yeah.
how can you not want to soak that in? I've had a little debate with another creator in the guitar space about the Berkeley MI sort of rift and friction. And I'm just like thinking to myself, well, when I count the GIT graduates, it kind of speaks for itself as a school. When I went there, Paul Gilbert was sort of like the big guy for everybody. And I actually did manage to have a private lesson with Paul while I was a student there, which was a huge thrill. Pete Thorne came through there. Uh, Alan Hines was one guy that had come through. I think he did go through the school, but he was doing some open counselings at the time. So it was great to sit and just listen to him play. We had
Yeah.
Scott Henderson coming in and doing open counselings. We used to have celebrity guests come in. So I just heard like the best of the best. And the teachers that I had were just so knowledgeable and so incredible, all the way up to like the one teacher that almost everybody who goes into GIT learns about, this guy Dan Gilbert. I'm gonna give that guy his flowers because I don't know who's giving him his flowers these days. But you go into GIT, you have no idea who he is. By the time you're done with your first 6 months, you know exactly who he is. And you want him to be the guy that teaches you before you leave that school. And it was such an honor to sit with him as a teacher and learn from him. He's so knowledgeable, he's so good. My music theory teacher, Dale Turner, used to write for Guitar One magazine back in the day, and in his own right is a fantastic guitar player, songwriter, and vocalist. He helped explain music theory in a way to me that completely took away the blinders. The scales were falling from my eyes, and everything suddenly became clear. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and then being able also, I'm sorry to like wax poetic so
No.
much about
No, no,
this,
no.
but like at one point we had a guy named Jimmy Weibel Jimmy Weibel was a contemporary of guys like Joe Diorio, Howard Roberts, the founders of GIT. And he's this 80 something odd year. He was, sadly, he's no longer with us. But he was this 80 some odd year old guy coming in and playing like jazz guitar. And it was just, oh man, it was some of the most beautiful jazz guitar you'll ever hear. And I was lucky enough to take a class with him. It was unreal. The education that I got there practically in guitar, and then in the greater span of, I did music business studies there. I went through the audio engineering program as well, were just GIT and going to MI changed my life in every way imaginable, to the point where even my personal life was affected because of it. My wife, I met her because she was a student in the vocal program. So
Oh,
it
nice. Yeah.
it changed everything.
Wow. Wow.
I
That's
owe
incredible.
I
Yeah.
owe a lot to my time at MI.
I'd say so. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And your wife is you and your wife are in a band together, right? You said.
Yes, yes, we are. The band's called Cockeyed Optimist. We've been on a bit of a sort of a self-imposed hiatus, trying to, obviously the pandemic shifted all our plans for 2020, and in the ensuing
Mhm.
years, we've had to kind of dial it back a little bit, take care of some personal things, but we are gearing up to start recording some new songs because the time is now. The time is now.
Yeah. Excellent.
So
Excellent.
so hopefully
Very
there will be
cool.
some updates for you on that in the near future.
Awesome. I was watching your videos, and one of the ones, several stood out to me, but one of the ones that first stood out was you're kind of telling the story about your experience. I think you were a teenager, and I think it was Christmas, getting the Les Paul that you've been using
Oh,
ever since. It's right
that
behind you.
one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one, the number
Yeah.
one.
The
And
number one.
it got me thinking like, I've had that feeling too. And I think any guitarist can relate to that, whether it's Christmas or not, whether the guitar was a gift or not, even if you just buy it yourself online, it shows up at your doorstep. It's that Christmas morning feeling, that first like opening the box, strumming it. And what do you think it is? Do you think other instruments have that, carry that same weight to people, or what?
Oh yeah. I mean, the one thing that I think with that particular guitar, I think it's an emotional connection to it, the reason why it was given, but it's also the what I've been able to do with that as my main. I'm pretty sure I said it in that video. Like, I pay my bills because of that guitar. I so many things have been opened up to me because of that. So the bond that I have with that guitar in particular is pretty strong. But I definitely think that that kind of thing can happen for various reasons. It's not just that kind of stuff. I have a guitar in the closet right now where I keep my main instruments at the ready. It's a custom Tele style build that was built for me by a very good friend. And that one has a special attachment to me because I've never really been much of a Fender guitar guy. I've
Yeah.
had Fenders over the years, but I've just never really bonded with one. And then he gave me a prototype that of the Tele model that he was wanting to release, and I just fell in love with it. It was everything that I thought a Telecaster was supposed to be, so I commissioned him to build me one to my specs. And as soon as I got that, it was like my Les Paul has its Fender counterpart finally.
Nice.
And
Nice.
it holds a special place because I literally picked it up the week before the whole world shut down in 2020.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, not 5 days later, it was like, boom, no, everything.
Done.
So it was kind of like
Wow.
it was sort of the last little connection point I had before everybody started isolating and things started going nuts. So to
Yeah.
have that, it was like that guitar was sort of my like a hold on to this, because this can't last forever. This connection is not severed. will be together in the same room again. And
Mm.
thankfully, like, our relationship since has been very strong. I consider him a brother, in more ways than one. And yeah, he's just a fantastic builder of guitars, and I'm so glad that he's doing well. Um, and I just love that connection. And it can be any other reason other than those. I think even amplifiers have the same thing. Effects pedals have the same kind of connection. Really, it all
Mm.
just boils down to, like, when you hold the guitar into the thing, when you strum that first chord, what do you feel? How strong is that connection? How
Yeah.
big is that inspiration? It's a very, I don't want to get too woo woo on you, but the spiritual aspect of, like, the creation of music and the idea of sound is been a very interesting thing to me in the last couple of years. And I definitely think that as musicians, we have a very distinct privilege of being able to be stewards of sound in general. And the spiritual aspects of it are really strong, I'm discovering. It's don't let me go too into the weeds on this,
Hey,
please.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine by me. It's literally all vibrations. I mean,
Yeah.
at one level.
Yeah.
Stewards of sound. I like that. That's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Trademark that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. That's cool. Speaking of your videos, another thing that I noticed is, and I don't know if this is more of a recent thing, but you've been doing these lesson videos,
Oh
and
yeah.
a couple of them are. I saw a few that are what you would expect, like how to be faster with your picking hand,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, bending strings. But then you also kind of went into a little holistic side of like how to stay healthy
Yeah.
with your arms, your wrist, joints in particular, and
Mm-hmm.
then warm ups, kind of non playing related and playing exercise related,
Yeah.
to help you before a gig or whatever. Um, I just is that something that you kind of learned at GIT, or tell me a little bit about that side of things.
A lot of that is very much based on a little bit of GIT, not so much, but it's more based on just the practical things that I've had to learn over the course of the last few years. Between, obviously, I think a lot of people had kind of like their alarms go up about health when it came to the pandemic. And that could go one of two ways. It could either go one way to the extreme where it's not such a good way of, like, taking care of your health, but then there are
Mm.
other things that you can do that can take care of your health, and very small practical things that you can do. I care very deeply about physical health for myself, for my family, and for the people that watch my stuff. And that was kind of the impetus, really, of, like, discovering, after my shoulder injury and after dealing with a few other problems related to, like, my hands, whether it be the picking or the fretting hand, it really just became kind of obvious to me that and my chiropractor, who's been helping me with my rehab and just general overall wellness, he said something to me that completely changed my perspective. And it's like, you're a performing musician. You have a guitar strapped to your body. That's an extra weight. And you, as a performer, are an active performer. You're not sedentary. You are an
Yeah.
athlete. So you need to treat yourself like one. And so I kind of just, my dad and my brother were both baseball players. And
Mm.
I remember them doing their warm-ups, so it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're going to be fairly physical when it comes to your playing, and I wouldn't accuse myself of being anywhere near as active on stage as, say, the Dillinger Escape Plan, but I've been known to get a little nuts on stage when I play,
Uh-huh.
and that's
Sure.
that's in the extreme. And I don't do nearly as extreme when I'm doing videos here or if I'm playing at my church, but it
Hmm.
still warrants, especially on the days that I have to play at church and wake up so early. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm still like half asleep when I'm like pouring my first cup of coffee, and I need to get my body and my mind ready for this, because if I don't, because I'm not 100% rested on my game, or I've been jarred out of sleep by my alarm,
Hmm.
I need to do something to get myself ready, because if I'm not paying attention, I can hurt myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially again, I think we're about the same age, so I'm feeling that too. I understand. The potential for hurting yourself is greater each and
Yeah.
every year. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish it weren't the case, but such is the way of it.
So, yep. Yep. You mentioned this, and it's something that I wanted to ask you about. So, you perform both in a rock band and in a worship band. Not to say
Hmm.
that they can't rock too, but they're obviously different audiences, different settings.
Hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to be in each type of band and where they're similar, where they're different, how they kind of inform each other? I'm curious about
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. So obviously, I'm just going to caveat this by saying straight up, if I play in a worship context, y'all know about me. I am a professing, practicing Christian. I read my Bible. I believe that Jesus is the Lord and Savior of my life. That's what I do. So that's essential for the framing. When I talked earlier about the responsibility and the privilege we have of music, a lot of that has come through me finding faith, in that I realize now, and this is to get a little bit more in the weeds, I love Tolkien. Like, I love Lord of the Rings, and I love
Yeah.
Middle Earth, and I love all that lore. And around the time that I first became a believer was the first time I picked up the Silmarillion. The interesting thing about that book is that, Tolkien's a Catholic, so he in of himself is a Christian. And he's writing the creation of Middle Earth like it's the gods singing songs. Music is what births life in the universe of Middle Earth. And sound and voices of messengers in the Bible are very important too. So I think as a musician, I have this incredible privilege and responsibility and gift given to me so that I can use it however I can to glorify God. And to me, like, the first gift I was given was rock. It was what drew me to the gift. It was what pulled me in and got me excited. And I have not, and I play some pretty heavy stuff. There's a 7 string back there, tuned to drop A right now. I got an MT100 sitting behind the camera right there. I do not shy away from the heavy stuff. And I have not felt a pull, after coming to believe, from God to like abandon the heavy stuff. So that's great.
Not even like, hey, no more tritones.
Exactly. Not even that. Not even that. Because I also believe that music was created by him. So we should be afraid of none of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that flip side, though, worship was a world I had no idea about. None whatsoever. So I had to learn on the job.
Hmm.
But going into the first day that I played, I was reminded of my training. My training at GIT helped me to understand the skills needed to be able to do something at a moment's notice, to do it professionally, to do it well. And because many of the people that taught me were sidemen, they were also giving us instruction on the culture of being a sideman. And the one thing that a sideman will tell you is, like, you're not the star of the show. So that first day that I walk in with literally 48 hours worth of notice to fill the spot,
Hmm.
it was like, well, okay, I'm not going to worry about. I only had 48 hours. Like, I prepared as best as I could, and I'm not supposed to be the focus of this anyway. Like, this is a church service. It's about God. It's about learning about things in the Bible. Like, fine. Like, pressure is off. And so I just walked
Yeah.
in saying, like, this is the greatest exercise in being a sideman. So,
Yeah.
great. The pressure's off. And I have no problem going back and forth between the worlds. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I have a good group of guys that are my friends that are guitar players on the worship team. One of which, before he became a Christian, he was playing in like a really hefty death metal band. So we have
Yeah.
that we have that bond over heavy music, which is great. And I'm discovering like heavy bands in the Christian world, like Convictions and Holy Name, and even going back to stuff like discovering Striper because I wasn't exposed to it when I was younger, but
Hmm.
Striper and other, like, oh my god, if you want to hear some really great like Led Zeppelin kind of esque Christian rock from the 70s, got to look up a guy named Larry Norman. This dude was on like, oh my God. If I would have known this guy existed when I first started listening to Christian music, I would have been just like, he's my dude right now. He's just so
Nice.
great. But it's all music, and I should be afraid of none of it. And thankfully, a lot of the gear I have, I know how to be able to make it work in both worlds. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of what does the genre call for? Okay, so the
Yeah.
worship genre likes fairly light drives, delay and reverb and some compression. That's
Hmm.
pretty simple. And fairly ambient delays and reverbs, but at the same time, I like ambient reverbs and delays in my heavy music too. So it's
Right.
not that hard to take the stuff that I would use in the context of the alternative metal kind of stuff that I'm creating with my band, and then going into worship, and it's like it's the same two pedals. You might have a
Hmm.
couple different sounds, but at the same time, I could easily get away with my main delay for my board right now is the Keeley Halo, the Andy Timmons delay.
Hmm.
I use that in rock because that's kind of what Andy uses it in anyway. And then I
Yeah.
use it in worship because it's just like it just works. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
why not use both? I think,
Why
and I've
not?
and I've even said to the guys on my team, because they always come to me now for gear advice, and I'm every time I always say, like, one day guys, there's going to be a permanent fuzz pedal on the board. And they're like, no there's not. And I'm like, yes there is. One of
That's
these
the one. Yeah. There's like I feel like there is kind of a, like there's pedals you would use for metal. There's pedal you would use for blues. There is like a worship tone in a way, and
Oh
and I
yeah.
know that there's variety, but like just like when you think of a shoegaze tone, you have a certain set in your head,
Hmm.
but if you're on a mission to work fuzz into that, I think that'd be really cool.
I'm telling you, it is not far off. I can feel it. There have been
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
where, because the church that I play at and that I attend, like, they write music too, and there
Oh,
have
okay.
been moments where we're working on, like, we're playing a newer song that has been worked on, where I'm hearing like this almost ebo-ish kind of guitar part, but
Hmm.
I misplaced my ebo a year ago. I can't find it for the life of me. So I've been replicating it up until a certain point with just a one of those Keeley Super Rodent pedals lapsed into the rat mode. So it's a rat distortion, and it's got the old school rat filter control on it. So it's basically just rolling off highs. I just make a really dark, super saturated sound with that, and I can create a fairly fuzzy kind of distortion sound for these sort of singing lead parts, and it works. So
Yeah.
I I am I kind of feel like it's a challenge for me to I I want to try to use atypical gear in the genres that I work in. Like,
Yeah.
if I can find a way to work like a tone bender into the worship sound, like, I'm totally gonna do it. And at the
Nice.
same time, if I can like make a super washy ambient delay work in that kind of alternative hard rock metal arena, I'm all for it. I just
Oh
chase
yeah.
tone, man. I chase
Yeah.
tone.
And isn't it kind of fun when, like, I don't know, you're playing with any band and you get an idea for in real time in your head of a part you could play, and it already has a tone, and you're just messing
Yep.
around getting that, dialing that in.
And you know, I've had so much fun just the experimentation of and discovery of what you want to do in the studio or live to make the music that you hear in your head actually come out into the world. It's so fun. I think at a certain point there is option paralysis, but because we have so much at our disposal. But it's like, man, there's so I'm staring at a stack of 4 amps next to my studio desk right now, each one serving a purpose for one reason or another. I've got pedals on my desk right now that I need to make videos on. They all do a thing that I'm like, I could do something with that. But it's just like, let's chain something together and see what comes out. It's very exciting.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And your wife is a musician, so she gets it too. You don't have to
Well,
justify all this.
yeah, I don't have. Thankfully, because this is my day job, and
Mhm.
because it's part of the work of materials, a lot of the stuff that I get in for videos is provided by the companies in order for me to do the work, which is great.
Right.
So I don't have to spend like the stuff that should be going towards our groceries on this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But I will say the closet's starting to get a little full, and I think she would like to see it less full.
I bet. I bet. Yeah. Well, you went to NAM. We were talking over email to set up this interview, and I know you mentioned you were going to NAM this year.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I've seen videos now from you that you've been to NAM's. How many? Several years. I mean, going pretty far back. Is that right?
Buddy, I've been going to NAM since long before I started doing NAM videos. My God.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think I've
And
been
you're
to
you're based nearby, I think, right? You're
yeah. Yeah,
close
and
to
that's
Anaheim.
why
Yeah.
I've gone to NAM for so long. I think this year
Yeah.
was my 15th year going to NAM.
Wow.
And I live just about 30-40 minutes south of Anaheim. So it's fairly easy to get to the NAM show and also be able to come home at night, eat a dinner that I cooked and sleep in my
Hmm.
own bed, which is excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What have you seen over the years? People who have been involved in this industry for a long time. I'm curious. What is your take on how the guitar market, including amps, pedals, etc., whatever you want to talk about,
Sure.
has evolved over that time?
Hmm. That's whew, man. We could be talking about that for a while. I will say, and I've wanted to do my own video, especially about this year's NAM, which I felt was overall pretty positive. Um, but the interesting thing about me starting to go to NAM was I feel like my first NAM show was 2008. So
Okay.
keep in mind that was shortly. I don't really think they had acknowledged that the GFC, the financial crisis of 08, 09 was happening. Um, so because of that, the industry was just like, this is the NAM show. Like, this is the NAM show everybody always talks about. Artist signings and this, that, and the other. The booth girls were all over Dean and Schechter and all that stuff. The
Yeah.
freebies and the swag were like, oh man, I walked away with so much free stuff that year. It was like, wow, look at NAM. Within 2 years, so much of that had gone away.
It
And
was like the
it,
stock market of 1929 versus
buddy,
1930 after that.
so true. It was nuts, like how it just went from this incredible sort of bombast to like, whoa, we got to scale this back. Like
Mm.
we can't do this anymore. And so seeing that, it wasn't really. I wouldn't even really say it was sad. It was just more like, oh wow, that was quick. That was a change. Um, but over the years, obviously, like as the economy of things started to get a little stronger, like NAM started to build back up. When we got to NAM 2020, man, it was like that year. I really felt like, yo, next year NAM's gonna be back. Like it was the biggest show I
Hmm.
had seen since I started going. The convention center was completely full. There was not an empty bit of space on the show
Yeah, I was
floor.
there. I was there.
Oh,
That was my second NAM. Yeah,
oh
it was
boy.
huge.
That I feel bad. You had one under your belt, so you at least knew what to expect. But I felt
Yeah.
bad for everyone that year that was their first, because it
Yeah.
even for me at that point, it was a lot. It was a lot. Now, thankfully, I walked away, and I've managed to walk away. Where's the near? Oh, here we go. Had to knock on wood for a second. I've walked away from NAMM for quite a long time without catching the NAMM thrax.
Hmm.
Um, but the interesting thing I feel about NAMM is that I do now feel like NAMM is starting to recover from the pandemic, which is great. It needs to. But the thing that I've noticed most over the years is that NAMM kind of has a thing that it does. And it does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be a business to business show. It's not a Comic-Con. That's the thing that I think a lot of people that when they first start attending, they first get a badge or they see the coverage from the various different content creators, they think that it's supposed to be something like that, and that's just not what it is. And if you attend the show and you really look at things, that's it's not hard to see that.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of people work up in their minds that like NAMM's like this giant guitar center, and it's like no, it's just the giant guitar center because it's loud, unruly, and it oftentimes sounds bad.
Hmm.
That's the only reason. But
I will
if
say
you,
that the caliber of tunes that you hear being played on the guitars at NAMM is much higher than Guitar Center.
I
So
will
there's
give
that.
Mason, I will give you that. I will give you that.
Just
But
wanted to put out that.
for sure, I think we should give some credit to the people that demo at NAMM, definitely. But it's a cacophony, and that's the
Hmm.
only reason that people think it's like a giant guitar center. It's not a Comic Con. It's
Yeah.
not. Sure, they do artist signings, but that's I think because one, signature products sell, and
Hmm.
companies want to sell to dealers and to buyers, and the artists are there for that reason. Now that NAMM has kind of laxed a little bit the restrictions on who can get in, when you consider the amount of public that actually ends up getting into the show, and now they're starting to offer tickets for sale to the public. I think it's time for NAMM to acknowledge that it needs to steer into the con side of
Mm.
things. It needs to be able to serve. You really can't serve two masters, but at the same time, this is kind of a scenario where NAMM has to consider that for its future, where NAMM needs to embrace its business to business aspect, and it needs to embrace that that's what people in the industry come to NAMM for, because it sets the tone for their year. But it also needs to embrace the fact that the musical instrument world has bred communities that come to get that need a gathering spot to come
Mm.
together in order to be able to celebrate all that they do.
Yeah.
And I think that there's definitely room for the public now. I didn't think so much several years back. I think it more now. I think there's room for NAMM to embrace the public that wants to see what NAMM is all about. But I think the challenge of it is going to be how do you implement that? How do we make it serve the people that effectively pay for them to put on the show, and then serve the public that's really excited about what's this NAMM thing? I want to see it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I want to see NAMM start to think about that a little bit.
Mm. Well, comparing it to Comic Con makes me think. Well, maybe more artist panels would be something.
Yeah,
Um,
something like that definitely. And there are a lot of panels.
mhm.
The one thing that I don't that most people miss about NAMM is that they do a lot for educating members on different aspects of the industry. One of my contacts he's the president, I believe, of a marketing company based in Florida. And he did several talks this year at NAMM for NAMM members about utilizing people like myself to further their marketing. So
Yeah.
there's so much that NAMM does for its members as far as education goes. And that happens quite a lot over the course of the weekend. And most people don't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned that guitar, that $500 guitar. Curious, what other things did you see? Oh no, that was from this past year. But what things did you see at this year's NAMM show that stood out to you?
Boy, what did stand out to me? Well, for one, I know the news of them getting, a substantial stake of their company bought out by a company from China has soured people on them a bit. But I was very pleased to see Marshall make the comeback that they made to the NAMM show. When I started going to NAMM, Marshall was, under the Korg umbrella. So they were just kind of a section of the overall Korg booth. But this was like, this is the Marshall that everybody's supposed to be like, wow, Marshall. It was
Yeah.
very nice to see them back and trying to, get back into the fold, now that they've been around for as long as they've been around. I got a chance to play the new and hear the new amplifiers, and they sound great. I would love to do something with those in the near future. So it was good to see that kind of legacy brand make a comeback. The one thing that I felt like was a common thing amongst a lot of attendees that I spoke to is that this year it didn't really feel like anybody was necessarily pushing boundaries, as it
Hmm.
were. Nobody was really going out on a limb, and that's fine. I heard one person say it was like it's a blank white piece of paper with black Sharpie on it that says NAMM. Like that's how I feel about the show. It's like, okay, that's fine. Um, but I personally found that there was a lot to be excited about, and for me, it's just as simple as every company that is here is here. Like they're still here after everything. They're
Hmm.
still here. They're still doing stuff. They're still releasing things. I'm happy to see brands like it's great to see stuff like EHX has still got a presence there. That's Electro Harmonics for those that don't know the shorthand. Uh, it's great to see Boss still around. It's and doing stuff and like, dude, I got this recently. Oh boy. This
The
SDE3,
EVH.
oh my goodness. And it's just
Yeah.
like, dude, this is something from like back in the day, like made modern, but it's new to me and it's so exciting. It's so good. And it's like that kind of stuff. Like I remember talking to a friend of mine about how I've just loved really delving into those classic session guitar tones recently,
Hmm.
rediscovering guys like Dan Huff, Michael Landau, Michael Thompson, Paul Jackson Jr., all those guys that played on all the hits, and realizing like just how much of their sound comes from some of these pieces of equipment. So I love the fact that a lot of these companies that were part of that heyday bringing some of their older stuff to a new platform for this new crop of guitar players. It's really fun to see. And there are plenty of companies like the younger companies. Walrus Audio does fantastic work. I swear
Yeah.
by their Mako ACS1. It's one of the best amp sim pedals I've ever played. Uh, it's just so great to see that there are companies that are still doing this and they didn't fall away because of the challenges of the last few years. And it doesn't seem like they're going to fall away even with the current present challenges that are facing the industry. I as much as the innovation may not have been there the way that most people would have liked to see it, to me, I just enjoy that everyone is still trying. If you're resting in the laurels and you're not at
Hmm.
least trying. Like that's one thing.
Yeah.
Companies have done that. There's every company is guilty of that. I don't care who you are. Every company is guilty of just being like, we're so and so, and we've been doing this for a long time, and you should like it and appreciate it.
Hmm.
Or even the little company that's like, I'm best known for making three things, and everybody in a certain genre has these three things. It's like, okay, well, I mean, sure, fine. But then one year, like that legacy company would be like, well, we shied away from doing this thing for a really long time, but we're doing it now. And I'm like, well, you're about 4 years late on that, but it's nice to see that you're at least getting the memo. And then the
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
company will be like, oh, I finally did a new thing. And I'm saying, well, thank God you're about 5 years too late on that one, but at least you're doing it.
Uh-huh.
And I will say, unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of smaller brands that are doing really great work that don't go to NAMM. And I would like to see NAMM make it easier for them to get to NAMM.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know if they have the space for them, but they'll figure out a way.
Well, as of last year, this past NAMM show and the floor space that they had, there's room for them. They opened up Hall E again, so the basement downstairs is open again. It wasn't
Oh,
last
okay.
year, so
Yeah.
the show floor space is expanding. So I like that, and I've heard some chatter. About what they want to do for the downstairs for next year, but because that's just rumor, I will not comment on it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, I wanted to ask you too, as a YouTube content creator, do you have advice to give on anybody who's aspiring to start their own channel or make guitar related content or just any content in general?
Don't.
Oh, really?
Oh boy. Oh man. I say that partly jokingly, and allow me a moment to find the words that I want to share. Content in and of itself is precisely what that word is. It takes up space. There's a phrase that I've come to utilize about certain pieces of work that I've done over the years that haven't performed as well as I wish them to. And I refer to them as collecting digital dust. The good thing about normal dust is that you can dust something off and clean it up and it looks brand new. But something that collects digital dust, you can't do that to. The market for content creators right now is incredibly saturated. Incredibly saturated. Because it's an avenue that's proven to people that it's a means of attaining some success. And that's great. When I started doing it, the first video I uploaded, like YouTube was still cat videos and guys getting kicked in the nuts.
Yeah.
But I went to my first summer NAMM show, and I was talking with the Orange Amps was exhibiting that year. And I remember talking to them and saying I had a Rockerverb 100 and I loved it. And they're like, that's awesome, man. I wish more people knew about that amp here in the States. Because at the time, Orange didn't have a very good retail foothold in the US. They're very hard to find.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten a digital camera. And I thought to myself, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that would like to hear this amplifier. Sure, it's not the best microphone and I'm not recording in a nice studio, but I'm sure that there are people out there that want to hear this. And so when I got home, I took a day to rest. And then the next day I threw that little camera up on a stack of books because I didn't have a tripod and shot a video of me playing my Rockerverb 100. And that kind of started everything. I took a break because, one, it was hard to find any kind of good work after I had done that video because it was the financial crisis at the time, the recession, and as soon as I took the first paying opportunity that I could, I did, and that took a lot of attention away from that side of things. But I saw potential in it. The idea that I have something that people would want to hear, and I want to share that with them. By the time that I had started up again and doing it very seriously, YouTube had kind of proven itself as an avenue of gaining notoriety in a given field. When I really got started up again, guys like Rob Chapman had already been around for several years doing what they were doing. And I had just discovered Andy and Pro Guitar Shop.
Hmm.
So a lot of and Gearman Dude also.
Oh yeah,
So
of course.
so knowing that there were these guys doing it, and it was like, okay, well, it's proven now that you can do this. I didn't see it proven as a way to 100% earn a living, but I at least knew that the idea of guitar related videos about gear was validated. And so I just started making videos of the stuff that was in my collection that I wasn't seeing a lot of videos about. I kind of came at it from the idea of really the first content that I ever saw of pedal demos was the ZVEX website back in like 2006, 2007. They had demo videos of every pedal they made on the product page, which was great because I wanted their pedals, but I had nowhere to try them out. So I would watch those videos and figure out which one I would like best. So I took that approach to it. If you can't find something to play uh, and you want it, well, where are you going to go to hear it? Well, maybe I can be the guy that you go to hear it. So my intention with like everything that I do is always, if you can't try it yourself, can I showcase it in a way for you that helps inform your purchase and also inspires you a little bit, whether you think I'm a good guitar player, whether you like the songs or the pieces of music that I create in order to showcase the equipment,
Hmm.
whatever it is it going to inspire you not just to buy the gear? Like, I can't make people spend their money, but I can inspire them to play guitar and create. When you get into this field, I think now, I say all that to finally get to this point. The content market is so saturated right now, and everybody that I see that's new, well, not everybody, a good portion of people I see that are new come at it in the same way that everybody else is doing it, but I'll always sense this, like, they're getting into it because they're trying to get, they think it's going to like change their career. Like, they think it's going to change their lives. For some people that is the case. But there has to be a nobler intention in creating content. It can't be as simple, it can't be that kind of simple-minded, like, this is my way to fame, this is my way to fame, this is my way to fame, because fame is incredibly fleeting. And the only reason I stick doing this, even though it's gotten a bit more difficult to do, I don't have the follow, despite the fact that I've been doing this for as long as I've been doing it, I don't have quite the following that people that have been doing it half the amount of time that I've been doing it have. But I still do it because at the end of the day, I remember the noble intention. I remember the guy, I remember me. I remember wanting something and not being able to find it, not being able to play it, and really appreciating when I found a way to hear it. And so
Yeah.
I want people that watch my videos, whether it's an amplifier, a guitar, or even if it's like we talked about earlier with my lessons, and even to the point of like some of the, more holistic side of being a musician. I want to give people something of real value that improves their musical life. And as being a content creator, I'm probably the worst content creator because I really don't just like making stuff. There's got to be a point. There's got to be an intent behind it. And
Yeah.
so, to get to the real advice, aside from don't, because that's not real advice. If you ask yourself the question before you start anything, must I do this? Ask yourself the question, what's the point of me doing this? Ask yourself the question, if I'm going to do this, how can I do it? how can I do it ever so slightly different? Because I think there's a lot of metal, rock, blues, all that kind of guitar in YouTube. Maybe, maybe it would be kind of nice to see some jazz guys get into it. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
But making content is hard. I don't think people realize just how hard it is to keep up with all the different platforms and the way that they're changing on a weekly basis, sometimes even daily. And it's a lot more work than it looks like.
Yeah.
Even if you're just doing stuff like your phone is your camera, if you want good audio, you've got to find a way to be able to hook good audio into the phone to be able to record that and automatically sync it to the video. And then it's like, then you got to do the legwork. You've got to build a network of companies. Like, I recall one conversation I had with another content creator where he was stunned that I was getting stuff from certain companies that, to him, it's like, at the time, my subscriber count, I shouldn't be getting stuff from them. And it's like, well, I mean, I was their friend before I was asking them to send me stuff so I could make videos and maybe eventually make some money off them. Like, I approach these people as my friends because that's what they should be. They were my colleague before I was providing them a service. Now, these days, I absolutely approach companies from the heart of a servant. Like, how can I help you? What is it that you need? What is it that you feel is not working, and what can I do to help you? And
I
that
think
has
that's
proven,
great. Yeah.
and that's proven to be the best game changer for me. It's just really steering into that, telling myself, like, serve these people in the best way possible, and if they have a need, meet it.
That's
But
great.
content's hard, man. Content's
Yeah.
hard. We had a few little issues and hiccups before we got started rolling, but those are the things that you deal with. And
Yeah.
I sadly don't think that a lot of people consider those kind of things. This game is hard, man. It's hard to keep
Yeah.
up with everything. Keeping up with the Joneses is far too exhausting for me. So that's why my computer that I use for my studio is at this point 13 years old. I'm running
Oh,
Mac.
wow.
I'm running Mac OS 10.12.
Wow.
My Pro Tools is version 11. My cameras I've had for over 10 years. They only shoot up to 4K. These days you could get far higher than that. And I still use a lot of the same equipment I used when I first really got serious about doing YouTube. And I've
Yeah.
not made many upgrades because the technology moves so fast. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
You just have to find what works, but understand that you're going to have to do a lot of legwork to find what works. And get ready for that work because it's a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're okay with putting in the time and putting in the effort and really understanding and honing in on should I do this? And what's the point of me doing this? Then you should be fine. But no, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. But you might get there. But I would highly recommend you not do it to try to get famous.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I hear the disdain in your voice, I think, for the word content and what it means, because I think it's kind of minimizing. And I agree with that. If you're just in it to make content to be famous or to boost your business as just an accessory to your business, you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to want to keep up with all the demands of it. And the multifaceted business that is being a YouTube personality.
I
And
really
making something from your heart versus just making
Yeah.
fluff content. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that's not fluff in terms of Ryan Bruce fluff. We love fluff.
No, no,
Uh,
no, of course not.
just wanted to make sure that that doesn't happen, because
Yeah.
that's the other thing too, that I think a lot of people in the content world, because the influencer space is so wide and things on the internet can get taken away from its original point very, very quickly.
Hmm.
You Sometimes you have to cover your tracks a little bit, and sometimes you also have to look before you step.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. To close this out, I just wanted to ask you, do you have anything coming down the pipeline on your YouTube channel musically? I think you kind of alluded at a musical project coming out that you want to
Yeah.
talk about, or yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's quite a lot going on. This year kind of feels like it's a year that I'm going to be stepping out in some new things, but also sort of reclaiming things. My band Cockeyed Optimist, which we've been kind of on a little hiatus for a while. We've written a few new songs, and we're getting ready to get into the studio, which is actually going to be here in my home, which I'm really excited about, to track some drums and get some new songs out. I
Nice.
kind of want to do a quick turnaround for this first single, and I think we might be able to make that happen. So I'm very excited about that. Kind of reclaim the band, as it were, because there's been a lot of new material in the last few years that needs to start coming out.
I bet.
Outside of that, gear wise, I'm staring at 4 pedals that are waiting for pedal demos right now. I showed you the STE 3000 EVH, which is great. I'm looking at a Boss RV200, which I'm thinking about doing something with. I really have come to really appreciate Boss over the years for all the things that they have done and that they continue to do. Outside of that, I did just do a few modifications to my American Pro 2 Stratocaster, which I'm very excited about. I finally feel like, all right, this is the Strat that I've always wanted it to be. So I'm very excited about that. Um, I would mention some of the other gear that I have, but they are not currently carried by zZounds. But that's currently. You never know
Yeah.
how
You
things.
never
You
know.
never know how things may work out, folks. But I'm just looking for really. I'm looking forward to trying to spread out the musical creation this year, and really delve into that aspect of creating. I've really felt it on my heart that this year is supposed to be a year where I start to step out more into that. So whether that's, I've really liked the idea of experimenting with different tunings and different tuning calibrations even. So
Mm.
I'm planning a video right now where I'm going to be taking some of this frequency research that I've been doing in the last few years, and actually trying to show people this whole, like, we've heard about A432, like the hippies love 432.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's going to be a great story when I tell that one. But then other tunings, like, how do you access these? People talk about in these weird new agey communities where everything's so frou frou and woo woo. Like, what are these frequencies? Is there any sort of validity to that? But if it's not necessarily in the spiritual and physical realm, what does it just like do for the sound of an instrument? What is
Mm.
calibrating your instrument to the A being a different frequency actually do for the overall sound? How does it change? How does the instrument then behave as a result of less or more tension, even in just standard tuning? That's been a really fun point of experimentation for myself recently. So I'm wanting to lean into that a little bit. Maybe experiment with some ambient records. I'm also thinking of, this might be the year to start working on like a solo guitar record, which for some reason, all I can think to do is I want to do a Christmas album. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Just like I started playing a few Christmas songs over the last couple of years, like trying to do like a heavy guitar arrangement for them, and I'm just like, yo, this is fun. I want to do
Nice.
this. So
Yeah.
I'm really just hoping to create more, not just videos is one thing, because that's obviously like what we're talking about. And I
Hmm.
still want to do that. And I still want to serve my friends that build the gear. But I also want to create music, something that people can come back to and continuously listen to and get something out of. I also have one other big project that's currently in the works. I'm contacting people right now, but that will be revealed in due time.
Okay. Well, looking forward to all of it. Sounds like you got a lot going on this year, so that's awesome.
I hope my year is full and fruitful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, Sean.
Thank you,
Wish you
Mason.
all the best.